Let me repeat what I said whenever we originally watched this, is that Arthas did nothing wrong. He was completely justified in killing all of the people in Stratholme, especially with the information that he had available to him.
No, Rat King. You are wrong on this one. Здравейте, драги зрители. Today we'll be going over something a bit more different than our usual, replacing the hammer with a craft. Okay, that joke was bad even by my standards. Oh yeah, make a video about an angry guy with a scythe and now poke my head out of the ground against an even more popular topic. I definitely enjoy living dangerously. Being fully honest, I detest all of the Arthas mania, specifically defending his actions in Stratholme. Delving into his incompetence during Wrath of the Lich King has already been memed on extensively by many others, but rarely do I see people pointing out how stupid and inept he was during the first climactic event of the Warcraft 3 campaign. Except for...
I can't believe I have to make this video, but if you think Arthas did nothing wrong in the culling of Stratholme, you need to seek psychological help. You need to talk to a therapist. The mass murder of civilians should never be the solution to a plague situation. We're not out there gunning down people with COVID or setting flame to people with Ebola. We just don't do that, because that is inhumane. It is inhuman. That is the point of the culling of Stratholme. It's the turning point of evil for Arthas. So please stop saying that he did nothing wrong or trying to justify his actions. They are absolutely wrong. The only way to defeat the undead is to flee, because you are depriving them of the resource they need to create more undead. The humans that they kill and turn into undead. Please seek help. Please.
You ever have someone explain a thing you agree with, but they do it in such a way that makes you want to disagree with them? Anyway, here's the actually good way to explain why Arthas did everything wrong when it comes to Stratholme. Very quickly before we proceed, please remember to like the video and subscribe for future uploads. Also, if you want to support the channel a little extra, you can do so via a coffee donation through the link in the description. Before I dive headfirst into stirring this hornet's nest, I would like to preface that I don't like Arthas. Yes, his narrative was well built and turned into the bones for a lot of what WoW was built on, but I just don't like the guy. The brash idiot lordling is not a character trope I care for, and his face looks very punchable. Yes, a tired trope, I get it, but it gets the point across. Namely, that he looks like someone who should have been spanked more as a child. Muradin and Uther dropped the ball on that one, it seems, but that's not the first thing they underdid in their careers. With that blessedly awkward segue out of the way, let's dive into the very reason for this video's existence. Did Arthas do anything wrong in his handling of Stratholme? Yes. Like, he fucked up spectacularly by failing as a paladin. He failed at protecting the people, failed to uphold his vows as a paladin, and failed the hero's journey. Outside of the gameplay, throughout the whole thing, he was basically a ret bitch boy that had only heard of prot paladins and myths, and didn't even care to learn that it wholly existed as a spec. Which is doubly hilarious since the thing you do most during the gameplay itself is spam heals to keep your units alive. Over the course of the campaign, he is just kill the undead, kill the undead, kill the undead. Okay, paladins are holy warriors. You got the warrior part of it right, but you're forgetting the other one. Instead of slaughtering the citizens of Stratholme, why did he not try to heal them from the plague? Or why did he not try cleansing the grain? I scoured the lore sections for this, and nowhere does it say that the plague was incurable. The Scarlet Crusade are able to maintain zones of control cleansed of them, with the same applying to their ranks, meaning that the powers of the light are more than enough to beat back the infection of not only the land and objects, but also people with sufficient belief. That could have been a perfect hero moment for Arthas. He has failed by just being a violence-obsessed asshole, so instead he calls upon his faith in the light, humbles himself, and becomes able to save his people, not by the sword, but by his honor and virtue as a paladin. And before the fanboys come to the rescue, saying that he couldn't do it because it was too difficult, let's get this out of the way. You mean to tell me that fucking Anduin, who had just become a tween and had barely gotten any clerical training, was able to bring the dead back to life via resurrection, which in lore is a super rare and unique thing to happen, But Arthas of all people, who had been training as a paladin for years, would not be able to cast Purify Food and Drink or a disease-curing spell on a bunch of people. I can already hear the apologists going, well, he couldn't just do it alone and just anywhere. Like, okay. Remember how about 10 guys, priests and paladins, out in a tavern in the middle of nowhere, were able to combine their powers in order to create an artifact strong enough to hold the Orcish and Undead legions, destroy a blade made out of old god blood, crafted by bargain bin reject Thanos, and slay Arthas after he got the Lich King power boost. While in contrast, we have Arthas in Stratholme, the city that housed one of the biggest and holiest temples dedicated to the light, whose consecrated grounds are so potent that to this day, after the city's fall, are able to sustain the source of life and purity in the living half of the city, that resists against the tide of undeath around it. So not only is Arthas at this super holy place that would have buffed his paladin abilities, but with him he also had a huge chunk of the Silver Hand Paladin Order, numerous human and high elven priests that had come to support his efforts against the Scourge, and among all those people were some, if not all, of the original 10 or so people that made the Ashbringer. All of which would have also gotten their abilities buffed by the temple in Stratholme. And you mean to tell me, with all of that, he could not cleanse the grain from a plague, weaker than the ones that get cleansed by literally the people with him who later formed the Scarlet Crusade, and cured the afflicted people with it? Expecting me to believe that is just bullshit. Speaking of that huge posse he had with him, why the hell didn't any of the paladins or priests try suggesting that to him? Uther, the supposedly wise and reasonable leader of the Silver Hand Order, just had his brain flatline when Arthas yelled at him that nothing else could be done, instead of butchering civilians? Why did that happen? Was all of that just irrefutable proof that paladins are inept morons? As funny as that would be, no, that isn't actually it. Because further on the note of his posse, there was someone else who was supposedly very smart and clever in Arthas' company. Resident bookworm, mage, and teacher's pet to Antonidas, Jaina Proudmoore. If the faithful failed in this situation, then what about the studious? At any point, she could have teleported or hearthstoned back to Dalaran, telling her archmage, hey, sir, up north there's an undead horde obliterating our kingdom, and they are turning people into more of their kind via this plague of undeath that is also infected in grain. They are being led by this cult of the damned, found by some guy called Kel'Thuzad? The moment she drops that name, the name of one of the Council of Six, who went missing and is now apparently leading a horde of undead and is crafting plagues that create them, the entire leadership of Dalaran would have magicked their army of mages over to Arthas and just AoE'd down the undead before placing Stratholme under an impenetrable bubble like they did Dalaran in vanilla. And given how many OP mages were there, they could have probably also made time inside of the bubble just stop, quarantining the infected citizenry and preventing the plague from turning them into the undead, until the wizards could analyze the plague grain and find an arcanely sourced, rather than light-sourced, cure for the plague. Why did none of that happen? My money is on Arthas syndrome. An awful sickness where everyone around Arthas, likely within the same area code, is affected by this aura effect, which causes them to devolve into incompetent buffoons just so that stupid bitch boy can appear competent when he is around. Sadly, Arthas syndrome is a very contagious disease that can spread into other franchises, the most prominent example of which being the last few seasons of Game of Thrones, where everyone, regardless of how brilliant, had their brain capacity reduced to that of the average warrior main the moment they set foot within 500 feet of any of the main female characters, so that said female characters could appear more competent by comparison. So many things could have been avoided if Arthas syndrome was not a thing, and if anyone between Arthas, Jaina, Uther, and among the hundreds of paladins, priests, and other Lordaeron military had more than 3 collective brain cells to rub together and say, hey, it's not TBC yet. Ret is trash. Respect to holy, and then give it a shot. Arthas would not have gotten his panties in a twist, making himself vulnerable to Mal'Ganis' manipulation, which boiled down to tag you're it, and would have likely not gone to Northrend, depriving the Lich King of a useful puppet. Stratholme would not be a blazing charnel breeding ground for the undead, but instead a strong point from which they could be resisted. The Paladins of the Silver Hand would still be intact as an order, so no Scarlet Crusade doing their bullshit, and because of their unity, and not having to send small expeditions into the Inferno of Stratholme on cleansing missions, Balnazar would not have been able to claim the body of Saidan Dathrahan, and because of that, the Ashbringer, both the Blade and the Man, would still be in active service against the undead, instead of getting killed by his son and then getting corrupted for the forces of the Scourge. Lordaeron's military and navy would not have been split up by having a huge chunk of it going to Northrend, since Arthas would chill and sit his ass down back in the Eastern Kingdoms, meaning that they would remain as a united military might, which, along with the Silver Hand and the mages of Dalaran, would have probably been able to beat back the Scourge. Kel'Thuzad remains permadead, so Archimonde and the demons don't get summoned to Azeroth, meaning that Dalaran lives. Though even if Archimonde was summoned, the combined might of Lordaeron's military and Dalaran's mages may have been able to beat the shit out of him, then properly marshal to go kill the weakened Lich King. The High Elves would not get almost completely genocided and have their lands ravaged. Okay, just like with the Black Plague in real life, one positive outcome does not make the shit show that was Canon Arthas' failure a good thing. Sylvanas continues to have a pulse, as do the rest of her family, so she does not evolve into an emo bitch. Illidan remains in cuck jail. Jaina doesn't take her people west, so her dad doesn't go looking for her. That means no large alliance force goes to Kalimdor, leaving that continent basically to the Horde, which, without the demons being summoned to bait the orcs into drinking more of their blood, leads to one of two outcomes. A. The Tauren mediate between the Tree Huggers and Thrall's Horde until both sides reach a mutual understanding and join up, Cenarius lives, and Night Elves are now a Horde race. Or B. The hippies and attack, prompting the Horde to just obliterate them, Cenarius dying again, and the elves get what they fucking deserve. Felwood never becomes a thing, and much more. In conclusion, Arthas did nothing wrong is a factually incorrect statement. He fucked up big time. He made the supposedly competent people around him into brainlets, and this wave of incompetence turned the world into a bigger shitshow than it needed to be. Now feel free to agree, or tell me how wrong I am in the comments below. I very much so look forward to seeing the results of this video in them. Until next time, I wish you a lovely rest of your day. Doviždane.